But 20 years in the Legion will make a boy man. 20 years in the Legion and they will give you land. 20 years in the Legion, you'll always have a home. 20 years in the legions of Rome.
Oh, hey, guys. Welcome to How Shit Works, where we look behind the curtain of how shit works in the Kingdom of Meridian. I am one of your hosts, Graf Ulrich von Brandenburg, and I am a knight, a pelican, and a royal peer, and the owner of many, many opinions. Tonight, as always, I'm joined by the Knight of Kittens himself, the bringer of joy, Captain Painkiller, Sir Erik Martell, who I'm very glad to see is healthy and with us.
Thanks, Ulrich. I'm Sir Erik Martell. I am a knight and a landed baron. And like Ulrich, I have a whole host of opinions that are solely mine generally. Tonight's episode is the third in this fourth series, and we're going to be discussing retinues. Now, most of us have been on retinues before, but it's a whole nother thing to be in charge of the goat radio that is the retinue for an entire crown. So we're going to talk to our special guest tonight, Baroness Rondalynne Serene and Baron Gwydion ap Urien, about how they handled being in charge of these things. Rondalynne, Gwyd, introduce yourself. Tell us in the audience a little bit about yourselves. And remember, several of our audiences may not know you, but even more importantly, several of our audiences know you very, very well.
I'm Rondalynne. I was the chancellor for Baroness when they were crowned. That was actually my first job in the SCA. So it's kind of just been a roller coaster from there.
Cool. I'm Gwydion. Gwydion ap Urien, not Urien, Erik. Thanks, though.
No. Pick that name. That's what you get. You know the rules.
It's not the first time. Won't be the last. So when my wife and I joined the SCA, our second event was the crown that Thomas and Elisanda won. And we hit it off with them before the list and ended up joining their retinue shortly after they stepped up as crown, and seemed to find our way onto a rotating list of close friends who were on the throne for the next several years. And then when Ulrich and Katarina won, I was their travel coordinator. So I have seen quite a bit behind the curtain and really have enjoyed my time on Entourage. So,
Well, awesome. I am super happy to have both of you here. I've always been impressed by Rhonda's organization. It's been rather impressive as I kind of helped. I was the chancellor for Bryce and Rhiannon while she was the chancellor for Bart and Oda. We had completely different styles of running a retinue. Rondalynne, very, very organized. Me, very, very delegated to other people who were organized. And then, of course, Gwyd saved us several times as our travel coordinator. But I wanted to thank you both for joining us. I'm super happy to have both of you here because I know how much fun you are. In case you guys don't know, Rhonda has written the answers down to all of the questions. And so we'll be mixing things up and changing things around so that we throw her off as best we can. All right. So the words for tonight's drinking game, brought to us by Baroness Rondalynne, is organize. Baron Gwydion, who hates my kidney, brings forward email. And Megan, which is our PR person, who really hates my liver, gave us crown. So if you're wishing to enjoy the drinking game tonight, you're welcome to. It's an opt-in. Please feel free to participate. I will be drinking Dark and Stormies out of my wonderful Firehorse Pottery Cashel Dale mug. And as always, we'd like to thank Between Two Peers for allowing us to be a licensed franchisee of their drinking.
So as we generally do, we're going to make an announcement right off that the first half of our show is all based on our questions, but the last half of the show is pulled from you, our audience. So get those questions into the comments and let Graf and Katarina gather them up, and we'll ask them in the second half of the show. Don't wait till 5 minutes before the second half of the show starts and then throw up 14 questions for Graf and Katerina to try to get in on time. Get them in early. Now that's out of the way, let's get right to the point. Standing behind the crown for several hours during court seems like an endurance test. I have really stronger words for that, but we'll go with the ones that I was provided for it. How do you train for that? The answer is not CrossFit.
Well, you're talking about just standing behind, like how do you get used to for that?
Yes. How you mentally don't throw yourself down a well.
Well, usually I had a job. Usually I was the one holding the regalia and making sure that they had the things and talking with the herald at the time. So I had something to do, and I would make sure that their drinks were full, and if they were having a mixed drink that night, hand it off to someone to get a refill if I couldn't do that behind the thrones. So I was pretty busy, and if it was a really big court, sometimes we would just switch off with people and go hang out and sit down in the back where no one could see us if we were exhausted, like at golf course.
I think the key to surviving behind the thrones during court is a solid game that you can play with your buddies. In Bart and Oda's reign, Robert and I often held the spears. And so it was a fun game to see who could subtly stab the other one in the foot and then not make a face when you were stabbed in the foot.
Time-honored tradition.
Time-honored tradition. Like Rhonda said, staying busy is a big part of it, making sure the crown has their drink full, making sure your drink is full. And it's also about what kind of court it is. There are some courts that are much more serious. There are some reigns that are much more serious. And then there are some that it's a lot more lighthearted. And those it's sometimes easier to hang out behind the throne because they're, you're joking, you're cutting up, things like that.
All right, so we're going to start going off script early because, I like to do that. So you mentioned that, you like to have a job when you're behind the thrones. Does everyone behind the thrones have a job, or are you just standing back there to look pretty? I know it's a little different for everyone, but, did you guys have specific jobs for specific people?
I typically found that we had a lot of people behind the throne so that everyone could have a job and you could take turns doing that job. If there are any young squires out there, let me tell you, you should volunteer to hold the sword of state early on so that you can have the honor of doing that, because that is the highlight of the SCA, a solid 3.5 hour court holding the sword of state the whole time. You should really get in on that if you can.
Yeah. I always had a job. I always had the regalia and was seeing to drinks just because I was the closest one to the thrones. So I always had something going on, and occasionally if there was something missed or they were giving out kind of a surprise award, I would try to get someone. I would kind of try to be like, someone go grab a AOA, coronet, or give me your AOA if you don't mind, and we're just going to give it to this person and tell them to give it back after. So stuff like that.
Okay. So now to the actual question. Let's just come in here. Standing behind the crown of the Land Baroness. Oh, by the way, I messed up earlier. It's Majesty's, not crown, for the third word. My bad. I'm sorry. All right. So standing behind the crown or Land Baroness during court is probably the most visible thing of being on retinue or entourage. We'll figure out what's the difference in those two a little bit later, by the way. So what other jobs are associated with being part of a retinue?
Well, for people who are just meeting their majesties at the event and going from there, there's the unpacking, getting them set up. If they have a tent, helping them get that set up. If they've got stuff to put in the tent, if they have a room, sometimes Gatalop will have an actual place, like a building for you to sleep in, getting everything set up there. Then there's getting the thrones to where they're going to be set up for the event. There's it depends on what pavilion. There's a smaller kingdom pavilion, and we usually don't use the big top at anywhere but Gulf Wars, but there's pavilions to be set up, and usually I'll talk to whomever is going to be doing that ahead of time to make sure they're going to be there. When are we planning on getting that set up, if it's the night before or the morning of? And then there's the very general following the crowns around. I mean, once they get to the event and they put garb on, they get followed everywhere, which is kind of a thorn in everyone's side by the time you get through a year of doing this, you're really over it, from what I can tell, toward the end.
Can I get a question refresher?
So, standing behind the crown or landed baroness during court is probably the most visible part of being retinue or entourage. What are some of the other jobs associated with being part of a retinue?
So the big one that always comes to mind for me is travel coordinator. And that's because that's something that I did for Ulrich and Katarina and really enjoyed, but had absolutely no idea what I was getting into when I agreed to do it. It is a lot of work that starts well before the event starts. I emailed their travel progress several months in advance before event started. Go ahead and make that point of contact. Let people know they were coming to the event, to set up where they were staying, if they were having feast, who was bringing what, and then all the way down to the day before the event, letting them know we're still coming. This is how many entourage there are going to be. These are some requests that they have. And then getting on site and finding sometimes that none of what you've talked about has been taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And having to then wing it hours before they arrive on site, or while they're on site, hours before they're supposed to start being their royal selves.
So,
And you were really good at it. How did you let them know that we were coming?
Email. I would email the people with the computer through the email. So when the day after you guys asked me to do it, I made a new email account that was specific to your reign. And then I started collecting addresses. I'll save you on that one. And sending out information. And I personally made different folders within my email for each of the categories and for each of the events. And I would just move them as they came into the proper folder. That way, there were several times people say, oh, well, I didn't, we never talked about this. And I could be like, hang on. I could open my folder and I could say, here is where we talked about this. These are the things that we were supposed to have done. There's a great Penzic story that I'm sure we'll get to later about my folder. And that
We will now.
Many emails that followed it.
I look forward to that conversation.
I didn't.
So clearly a lot of this work happens long before you get in the car to go to the event. Otherwise, you wouldn't be emailing people about it all the time with all your separate email folders. How much work goes into the planning, and what are some of the things that people might not think about have to be done ahead of time?
So one of the things that I didn't think about was just how much coordination went into and how much planning went into every single moment that the crown has at an event. I mean, it is scripted back to back, pretty much down to the minute. So for me, as the travel coordinator, I would talk to Ulrich and Katarina, and I would get an idea on what they had scheduled for that event, what they wanted to happen at that event, even if it wasn't on the schedule. And then I would look over the current event schedule and then email and make sure that the hosting group had the current schedule and knew what the crown's wishes were. And of course, 90% of the times there was a conflict of some sort with that. And most people were really good to fix it for the crown, but some people were like, no, this is the schedule. And so you have to very gently remind them, well, this is the crown. So once a lot of the planning and prep work that I found went into just making sure that both schedules were lined up. And it was typically a couple of hours worth of work per event. I found.
For us, we as chancellor, we had it was a little different in our group. We had weekly meetings, like, because they lived 20 minutes from my house. So I would go over there every week, and we would plan usually 2 weeks in advance for each event. That's when we pretty much start talking about what their plans were and what they wanted to have happen, and requests that have come in for them to attend this, or somebody wanted to be elevated here, or there was a hand fast somebody wanted them to attend, or various things that they had plans to do. If they wanted to fight with the children, like, kids fighting, and they wanted to go to archery, or they wanted to do equestrian, we'd figure out what they wanted to do at what event. And then the other thing was they would pick out who was going to get what awards, and that would happen about 2 weeks ahead of time. And we'd contact Parchment to make sure that the scrolls that were needed for those awards would be sent to their Majesty's home, and they would have the names filled in. So we would have those for each event around a couple days before the event would happen. We'd be leaving for it. During that, there's packing, but they had the trailer at their house, so we would make sure that everything they needed that was special for that event would be packed up, ready to go for Friday if we were leaving on Friday.
You had a list of things that went in the trailer, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, but I didn't really have to. Her Excellency Oda and I have very similar organizational styles. We worked very well together.
As opposed to His Excellency Bart, who has no organizational style.
He does in his own way, I have to say. Mostly it was Rhonda remind me of this, and then I would make a note in my phone that would go off around the time we were packing, and I would be like, 2 weeks ago, you said to remind you to bring this thing. And then we would go get it. But I would have all my alarms to go off during the time we were packing, or if we were having a meeting or whatever, because that's what I did. But that was we did a lot of planning. And for the larger events, I'm trying to think what was our super busy events. Castle Wars was a big event, and that was we started having, they had meetings at 8 a.m. and they went straight through till midnight. Trying to go to all the parties they were invited to and all that stuff. There were a couple, maybe 3 or 4, just super busy from dawn till night, schedule. And we had to plan for that and all of the organization that goes into that. Yes.
I feel like I'm back in class. Excuse me.
Yes.
I think Rhonda, when she talked about the meetings, it struck a chord with me on something. So I lived about an hour and 15 minutes away from Ulrich and Katarina, and they had weekly meetings too, pretty regularly with some of the local entourage, but I couldn't make it very often because I lived quite a ways away. But communication is absolutely key. Every single person that had a major point in the entourage, making sure that they knew what was going on, that people standing behind the thrones knew what was going on. Just being in constant contact with one another so that it cut down on the surprises. You're going to have surprises, but the more you can cut down, the better things go.
So thank you both very much for those answers. I would like to point out that remind me of this is not an organizational style. That is having someone who is organized help you. I know this very well because you've all met Gwen. 2, I wanted to appreciate how Rondalynne tried to talk around, I love both my children equally, but here is my beloved Oda, and oh yeah, don't forget Bart.
It's odd because both of them, I'm like both of them in some really weird ways. So like each of them would be like, yes, we need to do this, and I could relate to each of what they were saying. So it worked out really well for the 3 of us to work together.
All right. So with so many activities and duties going on during the day, and spending time with the populace, actually having some bit of your life at the event to yourself, because you can't work all the time, regardless of how much the crown wants to make you do that. How do you help keep your charges on schedule? What are the tricks of the trade? Because one of my favorite ones is when an autocrat would come up when I was Elnon's champion. The autocrat would come up and be like, "Their Majesties are late for court." They'll be there in a bit. No, they're late now. I'm like, well, I'm sure you can try to start without them, but it's not going to go well for you.
I did once tell an autocrat who told me that their Majesties were late for court. I said, well, it's their Majesty's court, so it's not late. They're neither late nor are they early. Court will start precisely when they arrive.
Mhm.
The autocrat did not think that was funny, but I did. That was what mattered.
That was not us.
No, you guys. That was never a thing for y'all.
All right, so how do you keep us on schedule?
Oh, I wasn't sure who was starting that one. Well, luckily my crowns were very big about being on time, and their biggest thing was, we don't want to make the feast crat wait. So we're going to start court on time. We're going to make sure everything starts. I mean, and occasionally things start a little bit late, but we would try to let everyone know that, hey, it's going to be late. Can the kitchen hold? But usually they were really big about being on time. So, like I said, during our weekly meeting, we would discuss each of their responsibilities and commitments. And what I would do is I would take the event schedule that we were given. We would decide what they had to do, where they had to go, if they had private meetings, if they had peerage meetings, whatever it was. And I would make each of them a schedule along with who their retinue was in accordance with the event schedule. And I would color code it for each of them for what thing they wanted to do, which crown, if it was going to be both of them or one of them was going to go to it, and who their retinue was. And I would have a copy, Ode would have a copy, and Bart would have a copy. And each of the crowns had a bag that went with them. Like once we would switch off, like, you're going to get them now, you're going to get them now. It had like a water bottle and had the schedule. And I made sure all of the entourage knew this is the schedule. If there was an important thing happening, that there was going to be a particular person. And usually we would try to put particular people, depending on what the thing was that was happening, that who would be the best entourage to do this with you, or to be there. And, they know how to handle themselves in these situations. I'd let them know this is the time they have to be there. And they were both of Bart and Oda, they were awesome about, hey, you got to be here at this time. It's this time now. And they'd be like, okay, we have to go. And then when it came down to it at the bigger events, the super busy events, and I know you'll laugh, but I mean, I went as far as scheduling shower times, especially if they were fighting. I'd be like, if you are going to go to court and court's at this time, and you get the opportunity to fight at this event, because that doesn't happen a lot when you're crowned. I mean, usually you take that time off and you don't fight, but if they got the opportunity to fight, I knew that they were going to be happier people if they got to shower before court, and then they had the rest of their evening ahead of them. So I'd make sure that was on the schedule. I would even schedule just some alone time, or just in camp time, so they could collect themselves. I mean, Bart's a little more outgoing. Oda's a little more not as outgoing. So she would appreciate, hey, I'd like some quiet time to just, be by myself. And he's like, people. So doing that would make them happier people by the time they got to their evenings.
Yeah. Just so everyone knows, Rhonda is the queen of scheduling. We may give her shit about it tonight, but working on Bart and Oda's entourage was golden, because I had a color coordinated sheet that told me what time I needed to be places, how long I was going to be there. And if Bart said, hey, I got to go to the bathroom, I could say, I'm sorry, Your Majesty, that's not on the sheet. So
she's incredibly organized.
Yeah. I think a lot of what she said there, though, is key. You also can't, how do you put this? I don't want to say you can't be afraid to tell the crown you're late, but you have to be subtle about it. You have to let them know, Your Majesty, we do have a schedule. If you're going to be late, that's great. I can go let everyone know, but you're supposed to be here at this time. And most crowns that might have trouble with time don't want to put that on their entourage. They don't want to be like, okay, I don't want you to be the one that has to go in there and tell everybody we're going to be late. So let's move it along. And also just remembering that people are human and giving a little grace when it comes to schedules, especially in the SCA where we always run 15 minutes late, unless you're Ulrich and Katarina's crown or court.
Yeah, it really does throw people off when you say court will start at 5. And even if you tell the heralds to go out and announce, no, really, we mean court will start at 5. It's funny to see people. It's kind of funny to see people look over and see that court has started at 5 and see them running over with their stuff because they all thought they could do 15 minutes. So before I let Erik go on to the next question, I want to remind the people, the audience, that keep those live feed questions coming, so that we have some stuff to cover at the end of the show. And I'm going to go off script for a second and actually going to pull one of the live feed questions in right now because it makes sense to connect it to Gwyd and something that's going on. And that's where Countess Sorka points out that she would like to know what happened to the handle on your mug.
This one? Well, this one I broke. Now, I do have a beautiful hand-turned mug that I got at my 3rd event when I was not on Entourage. And we got to the event several days early, and my friend, Countess Sorka, then just Lady Sorka, and I, just Gwydion, were sitting around testing the capacity of said mugs. And after discovering that mine would hold and drain and hold and drain and hold and drain 7 to 10 gin and tonics, Her Excellency decided to test the tactile strength of that mug across my head for something that I said, and broke the handle off the damn thing.
Well, you are hard-headed.
I am rough on mugs. I say this very carefully. This is my water mug tonight because I drink a lot, and I find I've already emptied one alcoholic beverage, and I'm not even paying that close attention to the game. But that water mug was gifted to me by the Crown of the Outlands when Ayla and I went up to Battlemore a couple of years ago because we'd had a lot of fun with him on the Fjordraka. I think it's the only SCA mug I own that is not broken in some shape, form, or fashion. Last count was 34 mugs that I've broken.
In a row?
It's a thing. $20 is $20.
All right. We'll move on from that. And it sort of makes this next question a little weird. So I'm going to throw in my hot take right before it to try to save us from that bizarreness. So my hot take is, what's the single event that happened while each of you were having to deal with the circumstances of either being the chancellor or the travel coordinator that just pissed you off? You don't have to give me the person who did it, just the details of what it was. What about it just lit you up right from the start? So maybe people could realize that the thing that doesn't sound troublesome to them could really be problematic for the person who's having to deal with it. And then secondly, I'll add the scripted question. What is the most difficult part of your job in general? But first, tell me what lit you up.
This is a great time to tell the Pennsic story. So, for those of you who are watching who are maybe not from Meridies, this statement may blow your mind. Pennsic's not that big of a deal here. There are other places in the known world where that, as I learned as travel coordinator, is not the case. In fact, Ulrich and Katarina were unsure if they were going to go. You were sort of thinking about it. Do you have a statement, Ulrich?
Meridies doesn't care about Pennsic. Hard stop. We just don't care. It'll be great if we go. That'll be fantastic. We don't care. Have a great time.
Yeah, there are lots of Meridians that go. It's not a war we're invested in, though. But the lady who was in charge of wrangling the royals for Penzik emailed me the day after I became their travel coordinator, which was only a few weeks after they had won. And Penzik was it 7 or 8 months out at that point?
It was at least 8 months out. It may have been 9 because we won in October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she emailed me, I mean, like right off the bat, oh, we're so excited that they're going to be coming up. And I was like, I don't know if they're coming, but I will get with them and I will find out if it's going to be in their progress. And we're going to be doing a lot of events in Meridies. Orc and Katarina do a lot of events anyway. So schedule's probably going to be pretty full, but I will certainly check with them and I will get back to you as soon as I know something. And I thought that would be give them a little buffer to decide if they were going to go. 3 days later, I get another email. Have their majesties decided if they're coming to Penzik yet? Well, it's their highnesses right now, and they have not. In fact, I haven't heard back from them because it's only been 3 days. But I'll get back to you as soon as I hear something. That lady emailed me 3 times a week wanting to know if they were coming. And I was, ma'am, I don't know. Like I started to lose my cool. Like, ma'am, I don't know. We'll let you know. She said, well, we really need to know because we've got to plan stuff. I was like, yes, ma'am, I understand that. But we're just not sure. We're working on their progress and things are flowing well and we're figuring it out. And I'll get back to you just as soon as I know something. Hey, are their majesties coming to Penzik yet? I've talked to them about it a couple of times. They have decided that they are not coming to Penzik. Oh, well, that's a shame because we were all under the impression that they were going to be coming. So even after I told her that they were not going to be coming to Penzik, she continued to email me about once a week. I've said email a lot, y'all.
You have.
Seeing if they'd changed their minds, if she could set up camping for them, if they were going to send royal gifts to Penzik, if they were going to declare which side the Meridian troops were going to be fighting for. And God bless Ulrich. Finally, he was just like, give me her email address. And I was like, it's okay. I got this. He's like, no, you're clearly too nice. Just give me her email address. So, yeah, don't harass the entourage. They're doing the best they can. That is the oh, y'all.
So the part of that story you may not know. So you give me your email address. We tell her, look, we're probably not coming. And certainly, if any of us come, it's just going to be me. Katarina's not going to come. But I want, I work in education. I won't know. So let's just go ahead and say we're not coming. She didn't like that. So she found a picture of us because we had a picture in the pop shift. She found that picture and she put that picture in the Penzik book, whatever world that world is. I don't understand it all. In April, shortly after we stepped up, Katarina and I are in Washington, D.C. at the National Zoo. In Mundanes, we do have on SCA t-shirts, and we're walking through the gorilla enclosure. Some random dude in the middle of the gorilla enclosure who works at the zoo is like, "Oh, Your Majesty," and bows to us. We're like, "What? Who? What?" He's like, "Well, aren't you the king and queen of Meridies?" And we're like, "Yeah," because we don't know that our picture is in the Penzik book, right? The Penzik book's not out. He works with or somehow is attached to the Penzik book and has seen our picture in this book and knows that I'm looking forward to seeing you at Penzik. I'm like, all you can say at that point is, "Thanks. Good to see you, man." And then we skedaddle out of the gorilla enclosure.
So that's creepy as hell.
It reminds me of a story where I think it was Duchess Caroline was in England, and someone from the SCA saw her and said, "Your Grace," and she was like, "You can't call me that here. That means something here."
They really have those here. All right. What's your horror story, Wanda?
I'm not going to say what event it was at, but yeah. There was some poor communication early on, and we heard, so they're like, we just don't have enough people. We're not going to be able to provide a royal lunch. And I believe Bart and Oda were still Prince and Princess at the time. And I was like, okay. So one of our lovely household members, Baroness Gwen, Mistress Gwen, she was like, I'm not going to let my Prince and Princess, part of my household, they are going to get a royal lunch. I'm going to make that lunch. So she went out and she provided this lovely Mediterranean chicken lunch. So this was just the first thing. So we had that, and then she's laying that out, and then they come along with it's like a cold cut platter, and we were like, you just said there wasn't going to be a lunch. Oh, well, we told someone there was going to be a lunch. Well, it turns out they told their majesties at the time, I think it was their travel coordinator, that there was going to be a lunch, but they never communicated it to us after I told everybody, hey, we got a lunch. Don't worry. You're all going to be provided for. Then later on that day, there was an elevation of some sort, and they had everybody basically just standing in the sun without any kind of covering for about an hour. And I have to say, and I remember because you were with us, Gwydion, and I was trying to hold an umbrella over the crown and you, but I was kind of hiding behind you because I'm really pale and I was being cooked. And you were like, I'm fine. And I'm like, I'm just trying to stay in the shade. So then
I was not fine.
Yeah, none of us were fine. We were dying. Then luckily some more of our household members came out and they're like, I can take the sun. They're like, just go get out. So they were holding sunshades over everyone for us. I mean, the best we could. There just wasn't enough sunshades in that event. And then after that, the event steward got up and said, hey, we've got plenty of places for feast. Just let us know. And we originally didn't have anyone. We were trying to figure out someone to sit with them for feast, and nobody really wanted to stay because it was super hot and everybody was a little bit miserable. But they said, we're going to stay. So we're like, okay. And I was like, well, I'll stay. Let me just go and see if I can pay for a feast seat. And I go into the hall steward, and he's like, there's no seating. I'm like, your event steward literally just announced in court that you've got multiple seats. We have no seats. Okay, and I think at this point, people came and got me. Because I was like, at this point, I was like, and you know what? And that was probably the most frustrating event that I had. Because it was just like everything, just the lack of communication was just at that point, at the end of that really hot day, I was over it. And I think I might have yelled at the hall steward at some point, but then someone dragged me out of there and sent me home to the air conditioning, and we were good.
And that takes us to Erik's actual question, which was, what's the most difficult part of your job? What?
Oh, is that me? Okay.
That's you.
The most difficult part was probably just trying to keep up with all of the special things the crown wanted to do. And there were a couple times like they were like, hey, the one thing that I remember forgetting to do was there was an art and science event, and they're like, would you mind contacting the different secretaries of the different orders and ask them if they would if they would have someone judge and provide a prize for this art and science event. And I said yes, and I made a note, and I never did it. And we got to the event, and I was like, I completely forgot to do. It was the keeping up with all of just the little things that were like, and I usually we did a pretty good job, but I remember that one thing in particular, I completely I just forgot. And it still bothers me to this day.
I can't tell.
Unlike Rhonda, I am not so great at planning. Where she read all the questions ahead of time and wrote down answers, I had my wife read them to me while we were driving back from Cincinnati doing 85 down the interstate, and I vaguely remember some of them. I planned classroom lessons the same way. I'm just not. I do a lot better when I just wing it most of the time. And that would sometimes lead for me to being forgetful, not so much in the travel coordinator side of things, because you had to be on the ball for that. But the most difficult part for me is remembering like what I'm scheduled to do throughout the day and making sure that I tag off. I would forget that I was only supposed to be on Entourage for 2 hours, and 6 hours later, it would be 2:00 in the morning, and I'm following Elisanda around Gulf Wars, having had no sleep, and she's still wide awake and partying. Saying no is really hard too. You got to look after your own mental health when you're on Entourage. Sometimes, even though you love your crown and you love your friends, you've got to say, I can't this time, guys. Like I'm bad about that. I'm a people pleaser, and I would let my own mental health get run down and a little burned out at events. So if you're ever on Entourage, look out for yourself too.
Yeah, absolutely. And your crowns, your friends don't want to burn you out either. But if you're like, no, I'm good, we have to believe you.
Yeah.
Because it's rude not to. So to go along with the most difficult part of your job that you guys just covered, what's the most fun part of your job? What was the thing that you got to do that was like, fuck yeah, this is awesome? It could be anything from, I saw this cool thing to because I was on Entourage, I got to go do this cool thing or whatever.
I loved standing in court and seeing people get their first AOA. That look, because you don't always know exactly who's getting what when you're on Entourage, but if you've been in the room when they're signing scrolls, you've got a pretty good idea of what's going out. And sometimes you do know. And so you kind of get to watch that person in the crowd and being like, oh yeah, I know my buddy's about to get something, or this person's worked really hard for this award and they weren't expecting it. Like they were just giving their time and their energy and they really deserve this. And getting to see that look and that shock and that just joy and pure disbelief on someone's face when they're called up is my absolute favorite part of being on Entourage.
Yeah, mine's the same. It was great to see everyone's faces when they found out they were getting an award or when they were called up, and someone just had a look like, oh no, but seeing the joy in their faces was very rewarding to get to see. Seeing the little kids come up and the crown talks to them, and they had some, like, you couldn't quite hear what they were saying if you were in the audience, but you could hear if you were behind the thrones, and it was adorable. Those were my favorite parts.
By the way, also slightly awkward. Really cool to see someone get their first AOA. Slightly awkward to see them get their third AOA.
Actually,
Even
I would
more awkward
argue
when
that
they
that's very
tell the
rewarding.
crown. Even more awkward when they tell the crown when they get up there, this is my third AOA. Oh.
No. You just saved them. You put them in a book. They can be upgraded later. It's like frequent flyer miles. Related, what's the most rewarding part of being on a retinue, in your opinion?
Oh, it's me again. Seeing your friends succeed when they're the crown. I loved to be late at night and you're standing around a fire and maybe the crown's gone to bed and you're unwinding and you hear people talk about, man, I love that Ulrich and Katarina are on the throne. They're just so much fun and they're personable and they talk to everyone, and this reign, I just love this reign. Like that, you get to see and understand your friends succeeding in a way that just is really gratifying.
Yeah, you kind of took my answer. No, it's awesome to hear good things. I mean, because you see the stuff in the background, and when things aren't maybe going well in certain areas, but you get to go to an event and people are excited to see them there, and people want to be a part of what they're doing, and they want to like you see people go out of their way to help them because they're just super excited that they're on the throne and they can, people just go in the extra mile to help them and making it special for them. Because I mean, there's a lot of work in the background, not only for retinue and entourage, but for the crowns. It's not always a lot of fun sometimes leading up to an event if there's something going on that they're dealing with in the background. So when they get there and people, you know, go the extra mile and just make something special for them while they're trying to make something special for everyone else, it's nice to see that look on their face and just see them appreciate it.
Also, thanks, Gwyd. I'm not embarrassed or anything. That was very flattering. Thank you very much.
That was purely an example. It wasn't you. Don't worry.
Oh, thank God. I feel so much better now. Ooh, the pressure. Thank the Lord. All right. So excited to be off the hook for that one that I actually forgot where I was. All right. So what's the best or funniest memory you have of your time on retinue? Any retinue. It doesn't have to have been ours or Barton. It could have been any of it.
I actually have two. One was, and it had nothing to do even at an event. It was the drive down to Panhandle. Erik was with us.
Oh dear God.
And it was just, Oda was driving and we were like in the big truck with the trailer and we left after work. So, I mean, it's like 5 hours to get down to that event from Birmingham area. And we were just going through, I think we like drove through the Peanut Festival in Dothan. And we were driving by like all these little like Western wear places. And we were just like, or we drove like through like by like a giant bonsai tree store. And we all like decided like we were going to go get some Western wear and we were going to go get into a bar fight and we were going to buy some bonsai trees.
I really want to see you in a bar fight. I will pay money to see Rhonda in a bar fight.
Well, Erik assured us that we would not like that.
I believe my quote was
Bart at the time, and we're like, "Hey, Oda wants to be in a bar fight." It was a lot of fun. Sorry, Oda.
Right. As much as I said, I believe the quote was, "As much as it would entertain me for you to get into a bar fight dressed as Daisy Duke from the Dukes of Hazzard, neither of you would do well in jail."
Oh, that is awesome.
And then the other thing, it was just the first couple of days at Gulf Wars. We had a plan, and we had food and we had all this stuff coming, but we were there on Saturday. You know what we didn't have until about Tuesday? Was food. And we got there and we looked at each other that night and we were like, damn it. Luckily, Primaris gave us a lasagna. That was where organization failed. We were just like, we're here. Oh, food.
I think the most fun moment for me would be the Meridian party at the Gulf Wars when Bart and Oda were on the throne. Because the Gulf War, the Lilies before that, a group had come from Drakenwald and had just pimped out Lands Connect the entire time. They had the full slash and poof, the short shorts, the giant cod pieces, and we were all just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. It was Bart and Oda's first and only Lilies, and so we all just were like, this is so freaking cool. And somehow the idea got planted that we were going to do that for the Gulf Wars, for the Meridian party. So some amazingly talented seamstresses and seamsters, sure, pitched in and made that happen. And Robert Throckmorton, Bart, Oda, and myself, and a few others, but we were the ones that were kind of in the cabin getting ready together, rolled up in those short slash and poof shorts. I had a cod piece that had my scythe from my device on it, and when I swayed my hips, it would swing back and forth. Bart had a pony. Robert had what looked like a voodoo doll of his wife as his cod piece. Oda had a giant flower. And Bart was so nervous After we all got dressed, he's like, as the king, I can't go to this. And I was like, Your Majesty, someone went to a lot of trouble to make that outfit for you and to make you look that good. If you don't wear it, you're going to hurt more feelings. If you do wear it, people are going to be like, my king is a badass. Look at that. They're having so much fun. So we finally plied him with Guinnesses and convinced him to walk down to the party. And just walking up and people being like, wait, what are they wearing? And to this day, it's still one of my favorite outfits. Like it just looks cool. But that was so much fun. And that party was rocking.
It was a fun party.
For the record,
Email.
Countess Circus says that. For the record, Countess Circus says that Rhonda would end up directing the bar fight.
Yes, organized bar fight. So, aside from making sure that you bring lasagna and you have an enormous cod piece, what advice would you give to someone wanting to serve on retinue?
I got to refill my Coke and rum. Hang on one second.
That sounds like really good advice.
Yeah.
My
if
wife
you really
made
want
me
to,
a new darkness for me.
if you really want to serve on Entourage, don't be afraid to ask. Crowns always need help. You may not hit into a high-profile job, but just any little bit of experience, I think, especially if you want to fight in Crown or be a consort for someone fighting in Crown, I think you absolutely should serve on an Entourage first, because it will give you such an insight into what's going on. It's not about wearing pretty clothes and standing up there. It's a job. And it delayed Ayla and I fighting in our first Crown after we really got started on Entourage, because like, you know what? We're not in a position where we can do this right now if we win. If everybody else gets sick and I somehow still manage to win, we're not ready for this. So you should absolutely volunteer for an Entourage and just work a couple of shifts and see what it's like.
Yeah, I would say something similar to that. You know, get the experience of seeing what goes into it. See what happens before court. There's a lot of preparation just in the couple hours before court that people have to handle, so everyone can go up there and give out awards. We're always looking for people for retinue. I believe when we made the Facebook group for retinue, we had 85 people at least on it. And there were some events that we almost had no one that was going to be at the event that was able to. I mean, the people in the home group that were on the retinue were like, yeah, I could, but I'm working the event. So there were times where we would just contact the group and be like, do you have anybody who is new, is interested, like a teenager who would like to do retinue for the day? Because we don't have anyone. So just having that experience of seeing that it's not always, as Gwyd said, it's not always super glamorous. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and you do see that when you're behind the scenes and you see the planning that goes into it.
My big advice for someone who wants to be retinue, you want to be indispensable to a retinue, learn how to set up and take down the thrones. Oh
yeah.
So that you can do that. And the minute court's over, take charge of people setting up and taking down the thrones and getting them packed away. And you will be invaluable to any crown.
That's the best. As soon as they leave, thrones go down.
I have given more spontaneous hugs after walking out of court and then being like, God, I've got to go break those thrones. I've been working all day. I got to go break those thrones. And walking in and someone has already done it and put them in the bags. And
it's glorious.
Man, yes.
So this is the part in the script that says that both Erik and Ulrich thank each of them and others for all the work they did and have done as part of your retinues. And damn Skippy, both of you and everyone who ever worked on not only our retinues or Erik and Gwyn's retinues, but any retinue out there, you are all super, super, super important, and appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's for real, because sometimes retinue is a load of fun. Like, sometimes you get to go to kicking parties and you just get like torn up and everything's a blast. But sometimes it's 12 hours in Schittsburg that all you really want to do is go the hell home, and you're going to get stuck there because you made a commitment. And sometimes I think people may not do the best job of communicating just how much they appreciate it and just how important it is. So for real, like, thanks for everybody who's ever done like 10 minutes of retinue work ever, because that's a thing that adds a little bit of pomp and circumstance to how people not involved see everything and make it a little more special for those people. And it rocks that people volunteer their time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to tell the story right quick. Sometimes at events, either as retinue or crown or just as a general person, you're up at 5 a.m, especially say if you're hanging out with Eleanor. Being up at 5 a.m. is not super weird. What is incredibly awkward is being up at 5 a.m. and realizing that no one is taking down the thrones, and you look over and see the crown leaving and breaking down their own thrones.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's sealed in, because Eleanor and I, drunk Eleanor and I went over and helped them. We're like, no, Your Majesty, we got this, and we broke down the thrones for them, even though he was in a t-shirt and jeans. That's just, it doesn't look good. So that's just not something you want to see happen. It goes back to, if you want to be invaluable, learn to set up and take down the thrones. You'll be invaluable to any chancellor, any person in charge of entourage, any crown, or coronet, or baron and baroness. And by the way, setting up and taking down the thrones, it ain't rocket science. Seems like it sometimes. Sometimes you need to be able to close one eye, stand on one foot, slide things, into the right spot. But and there are times when sometimes you can feel, as entourage, you can feel a little taken for granted, and that's usually deep into a reign where everyone's exhausted, including the crown. And please understand that you're never, ever, ever taken for granted. You're always deeply appreciated. All right, so that's the end of the live feed of the regular questions, and now we go into the myths and misconceptions before we go into the live feed questions. So the first myth I have is: isn't being part of retinue or entourage always glamorous?
No. Like, I didn't think there was one glamorous thing about it. I mean, it wasn't bad. It just, like, I look back at the pictures of myself during that time, and I had like a permanent line right here, and I always looked angry, which was weird because, like, I wasn't angry, but I was like, I don't know, anyone who saw a picture of me would think like there was anything glamorous about this.
Yeah, absolutely not always glamorous. It's a lot of work. I mean, I feel like if you can take anything away from the jokes and the things that Rhonda and I have talked about, and Ulrich and Erik have talked about, it's a job. Not nearly as much as being crown is, but there are absolutely glorious and glamorified. I don't know. I've been drinking too much. There are absolutely beautiful moments of being entourage, but don't go into it expecting for it just to be, hey, I get to walk around in the spotlight and be behind the thrones, and my picture is going to show up on Facebook a lot because there were lots of pictures of court. There were a lot of days where by the time the fighting started, even though I was off for the fighting, I already wanted to sit down and take a nap because my feet hurt because I'd been up since 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I can remember at Gulf Wars, it was like 6 o'clock at night, and they got the Meridian Pavilion set up, And I was like, hey, and could you also set the thrones up? And they didn't. And I remember I had these thrones, and I was like, well, I mean, I was trying to, like, I was going to do it myself, because I mean, they had to go up. So I was just like, I had like one over here and one over here, and I kind of hiked my skirt up, and people are like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, someone's got to put these thrones up. So then, I mean, but if no one does it, especially as chancellor, it's got to happen. You have to do it. Someone's got to do it. I mean, you can delegate, but if there's no one there to delegate to, you got to set the thrones up. You got to make sure it's all ready to go. And the travel coordinator is kind of in that spot as well. I mean, because usually, you know, you're teamed up in a way of trying to make sure everything is running. So, I mean, it's got to happen.
So seems like I always get the questions that make me question my faith in humanity. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask this one, and I'm not gonna scream into the void when I ask it, but just understand, somewhere right now, I hope someone is screaming because my mental powers are giving them the worst headache they've ever had. The question is, you have to be personal friends with a fighter to be part of the retinue.
Absolutely not. I had actually, Ayla and I had just met Thomas and Elisando when we joined theirs. Thomas stopped me at an event that our group was hosting, and he said, hey, I'm on the throne right now. You and your wife seem really cool. Would you like to, to kick in and get to know Elisando and I a little bit better, maybe help out on our entourage? That was his subtle way of being like, hey, I'd like to maybe think about asking you into the household and getting to know you. But I really didn't know either of them at all. We'd spent a few minutes around them, but we got to know them through their entourage. Caspar and Cecilia were the same way. We sort of just served with them because they were members of our greater household. But I really got to know both of them just by being on their entourage, helping set things up, being around them. I wouldn't say you need to be close personal friends at all. In fact, I have made a lot of fantastic friends by volunteering to be on entourage. Sometimes people that I wouldn't maybe have spent any time around otherwise.
Turns out Bart's friends with everybody, so it really wasn't much of an. He knew everybody, but even if we weren't, even if I didn't know them, if they were there and they could fill a time slot, I mean, I was more than willing to put people on entourage. There were some events that we had like a, an abundance of riches as far as that, but there were some events we had no one. And it was me, and sometimes it was me and Erik who were the only people at an event. And I was like, well, you get him, I'll get her, and we'll just spend the day at this. So if someone wants to be on entourage, depending on how they have it set up, I don't know any chance with us turned anyone away. Sorry.
So I was going to ask a different question, but that seems to play right into this question. If I want to be on retinue, how can I do that?
Is it me? Is it you?
Sure, go for it.
Go for it.
Lately, I've seen just general Facebook groups that anyone can join, or you can't. Usually I've seen them lately just do Facebook group retinues, and within the Facebook retinue, they'll do an event they'll do an internal event in the group for each actual event the crown is going to, and you say if you're going to that event or not. That's how I've noticed things working. All you have to do is tell the crown or tell the chancellor, and usually they will just put you on the list, and they'll send you an invite.
Yeah, I would say just ask. If it's something that you're interested in, if you're not comfortable asking the crown because maybe you've got a little peer fear and they are the crown after all, contact someone that is a member of their entourage. Let them know, hey, I've never done this before, but it's something that I'd like to try. I want to be of service. when I first got started, I was always paired with someone that knew a hell of a lot more about what was going on than I did. And so I got to learn what to do and sometimes what not to do when on Entourage, based off which of my squire brothers I was paired with. And yeah, I see those faces. Just volunteer. That we are a volunteer organization after all. So find somewhere that find something that you think you would enjoy and that you would be useful at, and do it.
Tell the Chancellor you know how to set up and take down the thrones.
Yeah.
That was the very first thing I learned as soon as they won, was how to take down and put up the thrones. And that was what I taught all of Bart's squires, how to take down and put up the thrones.
So, what are some rules that you have for scheduling the Entourage? Alternatively, Rhonda, you can just present your PowerPoint.
I do have 3 rules about scheduling Entourage.
Of course you do.
Shocked. We're all shocked.
1, you only ask people who want to do it. If you have to talk someone into it or you have to beg them to do it, those are not excited volunteers. Excited volunteers want to be a part. They don't have other jobs. Like, this is something that they want to be a part of. The other thing is you look for what I termed and what I've heard termed from other people called kingsmen. Those are the people who, no matter who the crown is, they're going to be there for the crown. Those are the people you can always count on. Doesn't matter who the crown is, they're going to be there if you need help. You pick out those people, and they're always more than willing and in a good mood to, if they're not busy, to do that job. The other thing is, especially at large events, but when possible, always schedule two people at a time. More than likely, not everyone is going to be able to make it. So you'll always have at least one person there. And I've had previous crowns tell me incidents where they had new entourage who weren't sure if they could go and use the bathroom while they were on entourage, and they were just freaking out because they had to pee, and they were really upset. So if you always have 2, people can be sent to, like, go get this person, go talk to this person, would you mind refilling my drink, sort of thing. And then, you always have someone there, or if they have to use the bathroom, you always have that availability to switch between the people. And if someone's not feeling well, you still have one person. The other thing that I think is really important is limiting the retinue time, having these 2 to 4 hour blocks where people who come and pay for their event can go and enjoy their event, and fighters can go fight, and people can go to classes, and people that have kids can, figure out, who want to do retinue can know my kids are going to be in childcare at this time. I can come do retinue for 2 hours, and then I can go do that. Having the schedule seemed to make people more excited to want to come back and do retinue more, because they knew this isn't going to be my whole day. I'm not going to be there for 8 hours. I'm not the only one who's there. I can do this and I can move on. And those are my rules for retinue.
Did you have any rules, Gwyd?
Show up, be helpful. I don't know. I was very fortunate. I never had to schedule retinue. I just had to show up when I was scheduled. So Rhonda, even though I know it was not easy, made it look easy. And I have worked some other entourages where that was not the case. I guess having a schedule. There you go. If I had to say it, having a schedule is important. I've worked some where they're like, we don't need a schedule. We're just people are going to be there and my friends are going to help. And then it's midnight and you find the crown wandering around all by themselves because, in fact, their people were there, but they didn't help.
Or they didn't know they were the only ones there.
Yeah.
Or this is one story I heard, one crown didn't want anything scheduled and his consort did. So the people showed up for his consort and he thought, oh, they're there for me, and left. And she was kind of like trapped in the condo because her people went with him because they didn't know. So it's cool to have
Okay,
a
so
schedule for all the people that are volunteering to help you. They know what their job is.
Gwyd was talking about me. Rhonda was not talking about us. Gwyd was talking about us. We were not a scheduled group. Rhonda was not talking about us.
No, I was not talking about you.
I'm just teasing. I'm teasing.
I mean, if it did happen, I didn't hear that story, but it was something else.
All right, so here's my favorite question of the populous questions that got sent in before the live feed. What's the difference between retinue and entourage? We hear those two terms all the time. Is there a difference in the two?
I view entourage as the people that are currently following the crown around. If you are actively serving at the event, it's like having an entourage, say, if you wanted to work off the derivation of that word, where retinue are all the people that are involved. Some people are only involved behind the scene. They don't work at the events. They are still equally, if not more so, important sometimes. So entourage are the ones you see with the crown. Retinue are all of the people who were involved making it happen. Is that actually what it means? No freaking clue.
I know Bart preferred the term retinue for all of it, and I didn't care either way, so we called it retinue, all of it.
Robert Glenn Novak points out that entourage is a modern term. I have no idea. I believe it. I believe everything Robert Glenn Novak tells me.
Seems fair. Entourage.
All right. So I think we're going to go to some of our live feed questions. Either that or my extensive painkiller use over the past few days has so confused me that I'm going to the wrong part now anyway. But since no one listening will know whether or not I'm correct, I'm free to do pretty much whatever I want right here. So we're going to go to one of my favorite people in the SCA, Duchess Rhiannon, who I love for her willingness to say whatever needs to be said in the fewest and generally most descriptive words possible. And her question is, having done the job, would you do it again?
I will say it took me a little, sorry, hold on, cat.
No, the cat is awesome. Not a bug.
It took a couple years of being away from it before I thought I would do it again. And yes, now I would. But for those first 2 years after, no. Like, I needed to be away from it for a while. I mean, it was a pretty intense year.
Absolutely. I actually volunteered to be travel coordinator. After Ulrich and Katarina were done, like 2 reigns later, I volunteered to do it again. Ayla and I found ourselves pretty much on a constant cycle because our friends kept winning crown right after we got into the SCA. We would make a new friend, and then that friend would win crown. And then on their entourage, we would make a new friend, and then that friend would win crown. And we pretty much stayed on entourage for the first 4.5 years we were in the SCA, and I loved it. Because like I said, I like to see my friends succeed, and it always gave me something to do. I knew where my people were going to be. And yeah, I like to serve the crown. So I think it's a very important part of our game. It brings some realism into what we do. The creation of the nobility and the honor that we give to that and the service that we give to that is an important part of the game to me. It makes it a little more real. So I enjoy giving back in that way.
Man, such a quality answer. Hey, Erik, you need to unfriend Gwyd and send him a new friend request.
You know, you'd have probably won sooner, Ulrich, if you'd accepted my friend request earlier. I'm just saying.
I didn't know who the fuck y'all were.
Look, I already forget that landed barons can have entourage and or retinue, whichever word that we have to use right now, or what they mean. So I would just forget if I was fortunate enough to win crown. I would just wander off and get lost that way too. So I don't think that.
No. If you just became his friend, you have a better chance of winning crown. So I need you to unfriend him and then send him a new friend request. Do it for me.
All right, I will do it for you, but you should know that Gwen is already planning your voodoo doll as we speak.
Oh, I just expect that to be just a general truth. All right, so does running the retinue make you feel like you have to be there and ready 24/7? How do you balance the responsibility against your personal time in the hobby? And that's from Clyde. Because I ain't trying to say that name.
It's Ian.
It's Ian.
Ian McKenna. God,
Give me a second. Early on, yes, I felt like I had to be there 24/7. I was afraid that if somebody didn't show up, that nobody was going to do it and that I needed to do it. And I burned out hard, like flamed out like a rock and roll star on drugs, burned out hard. And so I had to start taking time for myself and being like, you know what? They have people that are scheduled for this. I'm going to go fight in that tournament. Or I'm going to go sit down for a few minutes, or I'm going to spend some time with my wife. And we're going to enjoy this together because there are other people whose job it is also to take care of them.
Yeah, I did not. I was there 24/7, and it wasn't because it's what they said I had to do. It was because I felt like it was my responsibility. I remember the day after they won, I started getting messages at 4 a.m. Like that's when people would start messaging me at 4 a.m. about things, and it was like that for a good bit
Was
of
it
range.
the Penzic coordinator?
No, I never heard from the Penzic coordinator actually.
God, you're lucky.
But I mean, if I ever do it again, I will probably have a retinue coordinator to make those schedules, but they would have to make them like I made them. But that took a good bit of time. But in order to take care of my own physical health and I think I might have put on 20 pounds during that reign also, because we would go to those meetings and I'd bring 2 bottles of wine. And we would get the kingdom straightened out in those Wednesday night meetings over 2 bottles of wine. So
I don't see a problem with that.
yes, but I mean, I would probably delegate some of those duties out if I ever did it again, because while I knew everything that was going on and I would want to know everything that was going on, I didn't necessarily need to be the one scheduling all of that. As long as I knew what the schedule was, that's okay. And I mean, I had to go through it to realize I don't need to physically be doing everything.
So in the background, we're getting a lecture on making sure that we say "oh" and not other things. I call him Clyde because I know I can say that, and the people who know. They know who I'm talking about. It's Clyde.
I'm just going to invent a name.
I could
Next
give
week.
him one. It'll probably stick. They normally do.
Next week, I'm going to give him a nickname. It's going to happen.
Clyde. He goes by Clyde. Clyde's fine. All right, so that's the last of our live feed questions and the last of our myths and misconceptions that we have, and right on time. Look at that.
I don't even know how that happened. So, this is your last chance. Anything for the two of you on the topic of retinue and or entourage that we missed and you want to cover before we go into the wrap-up of the show?
I got to say my 3 rules. I'm good.
I got to say email a whole lot and tell the Penzic story. That's pretty much what I think I was invited for.
That's pretty solid.
That's fair.
All right, so we all answer these, and I will go last. Do you have any shout outs, any other shows you watch, people doing good things, books you're reading, whatever you want to give a shout out to, give it to us.
I don't watch any shows.
You watch this
Sorry.
show.
I watch this show, but this is the show that I watch. I don't watch any other shows. I don't even watch TV.
You watch the Saturday show.
But, yeah, but that's your other show. So a shout out to Hound and Stag. That's the show I watch, both of them.
Someone alert
definitely.
security.
I would also like to give a shout out to both Hound and Stag shows, in case you haven't heard of them, hosted by two bald jackasses that like to drink on the air. It's a lot of fun. My current reading list is not super exciting. They're all classroom management and early childhood pedagogy books, so nothing really exciting for our viewers. I'm ready for the school year to be over.
It's the name
I'm
of the wind,
reading
isn't
George
it?
Washington. Huh?
It's the name of the wind, isn't it?
I'd love to have a chance to reread Name of the Wind right now. It'd be a hell of a lot more fun than what I'm reading. Hey, look, it says my name on the bottom.
It does.
I just saw it on the video.
Does it say that on the handle?
It did. But then I had to just put this one on here. So
At least it's not Owen
Or Clyde.
or Clyde. So my shout out tonight is gonna be like for a group that doesn't often get a lot of shout outs. And I wanna shout out the members of the BOD because they've had to make some decisions this past year. They're guaranteed to piss off people no matter what they decided, and no one was going to be fully happy with anything that they did, and everybody was going to have strong opinions that may or may not be based in any form of reality, yet they felt entitled to verbalize them on every form of social media ever. So, like, I realize you guys volunteered for that job, but still, I am so sorry that you have to deal with so many jackasses and malcontents. Keep doing what you do. Hopefully, when your term on the board is over, you're going to find your joy again, and just ignore morons. That's what you got to do in life.
My shout out this week for shows is going to go to Between Two Peers as always. They are closing in. This weekend will be this Friday will be their 52nd week in a row. They'll have done 52 weekly shows plus several bonus shows. So they have actually been doing this every week for a year. So kudos to them. Mr. Sassy Seamstress and Sir Danger Muppet have been killing it for a year, and they're going to take a little break, and they deserve it. Also, thanks to Ask the Knights Live, who had John Brakefield and myself on last Thursday. That was super fun. But my big shout out this week goes to Duchess Maisie of Dunbark for her Dress the Jocks thing. I lost it. Adopt a Jock program. That's doing super special work for everybody. And her stitchers are the real heroes of that, and we really appreciate them. So if you want to look that up, you can find it on Facebook, and it's a super good way of giving back and being generous, and make sure you thank your stitchers and you thank Duchess Maisie. Finally, my last shout out is we have merch. We have merch. So go to hound-and-stag.com and buy some merch. It's going to pay for our StreamYard fees for every month, and that's how we're going to pay for that. So give us a good review. There you go. That's my shout outs.
All right. This is the portion where we give thanks for everyone involved, and we're going to do that. But I'm going to take just a second to remind all of you guys who've been sitting on your asses for a year that you need to get up and start stretching and start moving around before you walk out there and try to be better than you were before pandemic hit. Understand me, you do not want to get the chance to fight for the first time in over a year and hurt yourself and then to watch all your friends get to do it while you start doing rehab. Don't be a moron. Now, we'd like to thank both of you for being on our show. Baroness Rondalynne, Baroness Gwydion. It's been really great having you here. Thank you for being involved with our show and for giving us your knowledge and perspective on managing being both chancellor and travel coordinator. We'd also like to thank our support crew. Like, really, folks, these people are the best. Ulrich and I are pretty much two gibbering monkeys up here who are like 5 minutes away from throwing poo at us and you and everyone involved. And her ladyship, Jessica Osprey, like, she not only controls this show, but she also controls the universe. Sorry, Jessica, I'm contractually obligated to say that you do that every time we run this show. The guys with the tinfoil hats make me do that. We'd also take Mistress Adriana for the wonderful scripts. I really wish I'd stick more on them because they are amazing, but I am who I am, and I'm just sorry about that. We'd also like to thank Her Excellency Katerina, who tries so hard to keep us on time, even though we so like hearing the sound of our own voices. And we'd like to thank Lord Kikuchi for technical support. And for God's sakes, I need all the technical support I can get. And finally, we really appreciate you guys showing up, many of you, every week to hear the people who know these subjects the best give us the very best information that we can have about them. And so hopefully people will understand how these processes work and all the efforts that are being done really on their behalf. You guys rock. Hopefully we'll see you for a lot longer. But really, thanks for all of it.
And we almost forgot. We don't have her in the script for some reason, but we're going to get it on there for that because we forgot. So it's Lady Margaret. Thank you so much. She's our PR person now, and she's done a bang-up job getting the events made and to get a little more PR out there. And on the line of PR, if you're watching live here on Facebook or on YouTube, so if you're on YouTube, up here in this, down here in this corner, I always do that. Down here in this corner, like and subscribe. When we hit 100 subscribers, our Facebook page will go from being YouTube a bunch of numbers to youtube.houndandstag.com. So that'll be great. And then if you're on Facebook, hit like and follow up here. And that helps the algorithm so that more people see us and more people in the SCA can find us and listen to us yammer on for hours and hours on end. And that's it. That's what we've got.
Well, we also want to remind people to make sure they watch the next week's show, which will be about the Kingdom Law Committee with our special guest, Baroness Gira, Master Nikoslav, and the Honorable Lord Droga. And trust me, I can get those people to say some really controversial things.
Yeah, I totally skipped the whole line. So if you're watching live, give us about a 5-minute break. Then feel free to join us on the Zoom for the after show, the live feed. Watch the live feed comments on Facebook for the link. We'll hang out and chat for about half an hour after the show. Graf and Katerina will post it about now. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
And if I die in battle, tomorrow I'll be home, though it's 70 days march to there from Rome. But a soul travels swiftly on the night wind, and if I die in battle, I'll be home again.